My mom tossed me out at 14 after my stepdad falsely accused me of stealing. Years later, he took everything and vanished. Now she demands my help, saying, I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me? Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit. My mom ditched me at 14 when she believed her husband's lie over me. I moved in with my grandparents and built myself from nothing. Years later, karma hit her hard, and she came demanding help. I sacrificed everything for you, she said. Funny how that works. Here's how it went down. I'm 29 male, running my own successful web design agency that I've built from the ground up since graduation. I have a nice place in a good neighborhood, and my investment portfolio is doing better than I expected. While I've worked my ass off to get where I am, there's still a part of me that looks back and wonders what life could have been like if my dad hadn't died and my mom hadn't made such shitty choices. My dad died when I was 8. Car accident. Some guy ran a red light and T-boned him at an intersection. He wasn't perfect. He worked too much and sometimes missed my baseball games, but he loved me and took care of me. We'd go fishing on weekends. He'd help with my homework, normal dad stuff. He taught me how to change oil in a car when I was 7, saying it was something every man should know. I still remember the pride in his voice when I did it right the first time. After he died, it was like my mom completely changed. The warmth disappeared overnight. It's like she resented having to take care of me on her own. We had life insurance money. Not a fortune, but enough that we should have been comfortable for years. Dad had always been smart about that stuff, but my mom acted like we were broke all the time. She'd buy herself new clothes, get her hair done at expensive salons, and then scream at me for needing new shoes for school. I'd get the bare minimum: dollar store school supplies, thrift store clothes, and constant reminders of how much of a financial burden I was. Your dad left me with all this responsibility, she'd say, like I was some unwanted package that got dumped on her doorstep, not her own kid. About 6 months after Dad died, I made the mistake of asking her if I could join the baseball team at school. The fee was only $60, but you'd think I'd asked for a new car. She completely lost it, screaming that I was ungrateful and selfish. Your father is dead, and all you care about is freaking baseball, she shrieked, getting right in my face. Then she slapped me hard enough that my ear rang for hours afterward. I never asked to join any sports teams again. The first couple years after Dad died, I was basically raising myself. Mom would leave me home alone for hours, sometimes overnight, while she was working or out with friends. I was making my own meals by 9, doing my own laundry, setting my alarm to get myself to school. If I got sick, I had to deal with it myself. Once I had a fever of 102, and I remember stumbling to the bathroom to get myself Tylenol, then falling asleep on the bathroom floor because I was too dizzy to make it back to bed. Mom found me there in the morning and just stepped over me to do her makeup. Another time, when I was 10, I accidentally dropped a glass while doing the dishes. It shattered on the kitchen floor, and before I could even start cleaning it up, my mom stormed in. She grabbed me by the arm so hard it left finger-shaped bruises and shoved my face down toward the broken glass. "Look what you did!" she screamed. "You're just like your father, careless and stupid." She made me pick up every shard with my bare hands while she watched. I cut my finger and started crying, which only made her angrier. "Stop being such a baby," she spat. "Men don't cry." I learned to be extra careful around her after that, to make myself as small and quiet as possible. My grandparents stepped in as much as they could. They lived about an hour away, and I'd spend weekends with them when my mom would need a break from parenting. They knew something was wrong, but they were in a tough spot. My mom would get defensive if they tried to talk to her about how she was treating me. "Don't tell me how to raise my son," she'd snap. When I was about 11, my mom met this guy named Jensen at her job. She was an office manager at a construction company, and he was one of the contractors they hired regularly. From the moment I met him, something felt off. He smiled a lot around my mom, acted all charming, but when she wasn't looking, he'd give me these cold stares, the kind that made it clear he saw me as an obstacle. In front of my mom, he'd ruffle my hair and ask about school with this fake interest. "Hey buddy, how's it going?" But the second she stepped out of the room, the act dropped. He'd ignore me completely or make little comments under his breath about how messy I was or how much space I took up. After dating for only a few months, he asked my mom to move in with him. His place was bigger, in a better neighborhood, and she jumped at the opportunity. I didn't want to leave our house, the one with memories of my dad, but my opinion didn't matter. I remember packing up my room, finding the fishing lures my dad and I had collected, and crying when my mom told me to hurry up because Jensen was waiting in the truck. The move changed everything. Jensen was a control freak. Everything had a place. Everything had a rule. I couldn't eat in my room, couldn't leave a glass on the counter, couldn't have friends over without 3 days' notice. My stuff was always in the way or cluttering up his house. I had to ask permission to watch TV, use the computer, or even go outside sometimes. My relationship with my mom got worse by the day. She was so desperate to please Jensen that she started seeing me through his eyes, as an inconvenience. She'd snap at me for the smallest things, always taking his side in every disagreement. Even when he was clearly being unfair, she'd back him up. "You need to be more respectful of Jensen," she'd say. "This is his house, and he's kind enough to let you live here." Like I should be grateful that my mom's boyfriend allowed me to have a roof over my head, as if I wasn't her responsibility, as if my dad hadn't left insurance money that she'd probably blown through by then. I tried to keep my head down, tried to avoid giving them reasons to complain, but it never mattered. Jensen would always find something wrong. The weekends at my grandparents' became my lifeline. Every Friday afternoon, I'd count the minutes until my grandpa's truck would pull into Jensen's driveway. The relief I'd feel when I climbed into that truck was indescribable. For 2 days, I could breathe. I could be a kid. About a year after moving in, they got married. 2 months later, my mom announced she was pregnant. Jensen was ecstatic. He'd finally have his real kid. The night they told me about the baby, Jensen sat me down for a man-to-man talk. "Things are going to change around here," he said, his voice serious. "Your mom's having my baby, and that means she's not going to have time for you anymore. You're going to need to grow up fast." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I had basically been parenting myself for years already, but somehow I wasn't grown up enough in his eyes. During the pregnancy, it became obvious that Jensen was looking for ways to get rid of me. He started complaining about money, even though he had his own business as a contractor and my mom worked as an office manager. Suddenly, they couldn't afford my school activities or the clothes I needed. My mom completely checked out when it came to me. All her energy went to preparing for the baby and keeping Jensen happy. If I asked for help with something school-related, she'd sigh dramatically, like I was asking her to climb Mount Everest. "I don't have time for this right now," she'd say. "Figure it out yourself. You're old enough." I was 13, trying to navigate middle school with essentially no parents. The only adult who seemed to give a shit was my English teacher, who noticed I was wearing the same 2 shirts every week and quietly gave me a gift card to a department store, saying I'd won it in a class contest. I knew it was a lie. There had been no contest, but I was too grateful to call him on it. The baby, Theo, arrived when I was 14. From that moment, I might as well have been invisible. Jensen didn't even pretend to tolerate me anymore. He'd walk right past me in the hallway without acknowledging me. He'd interrupt me if I tried to speak at dinner. He'd make comments right in front of my mom about how much quieter the house would be with just the 3 of them. My mom would sometimes look uncomfortable, but never defended me. She was completely under his control by then, agreeing with everything he said. Any connection we'd had before my dad died was completely gone. I'd try to help with Theo sometimes, thinking maybe if I proved I could be useful, they'd want me around. I'd offer to hold him so my mom could shower, or I'd heat up a bottle if he was crying. But Jensen would always step in. "I've got him," he'd say coldly, taking the baby from me like he thought I might drop him on purpose. One day, about 2 months after Theo was born, I came home from school to find Jensen waiting for me. My mom was in the nursery with the baby. "Something's missing from my office," he said, his face stern. "My collection of silver coins. They were in my desk drawer, and now some of them are gone." I was confused. I never went into his office. It was strictly off limits. "I don't know anything about any coins," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. No one else would have taken them. Your mom wouldn't touch my things, and we haven't had visitors." "I didn't take anything," I insisted. "I've never even seen your coins." Jensen called my mom into the room. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes from being up with the baby. "Tell her what you did," Jensen demanded. "I didn't do anything," I said, looking at my mom, hoping she'd believe me. Jensen opened his hand, revealing a silver coin. "I found this in his room, in his dresser drawer. My blood ran cold. I knew he'd planted it. I hadn't taken anything, and I definitely hadn't hidden a coin in my dresser. I kept my dresser meticulously organized and had been through it that morning looking for a clean shirt. There was no way that coin had been there." "That's not mine," I said. "I've never seen it before." "He's lying." My mom's face hardened. "Don't call Jensen a liar. Why would he make this up?" "To get rid of me," I said. my voice rising in desperation. He's always wanted me gone. He planted that coin in my room. Jensen put his arm around my mom. See how he is? Stealing from us and then making up stories? We can't trust him around the baby. What if he takes something of Theo's next? Or worse. I couldn't believe what was happening. Mom, please, I begged. You know I wouldn't steal. She looked at me with cold eyes that I didn't recognize. I don't know what you do anymore. You've been nothing but difficult since we moved in with Jensen. And now this? The argument escalated. Jensen kept pushing, saying they couldn't have a thief in the house, that I was a bad influence for the baby. My mom, exhausted and manipulated, finally snapped. Maybe you should go stay with your grandparents for a while, she said, until you can learn to respect our home and our rules. I knew a while meant forever. Jensen had won. He'd manufactured the perfect excuse to get rid of me, and my mom had fallen for it. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe she knew exactly what was happening and was relieved to have an out. Either way, I was done. As I threw clothes into a duffel bag, I heard them talking in the kitchen. Jensen's voice was soothing now, telling my mom she'd made the right decision, that I needed discipline and structure, that they couldn't provide with a newborn in the house. I wasn't stupid. I knew I wasn't coming back. My mom didn't even drive me to my grandparents. Jensen did, with this smug look on his face the whole time. When we pulled up to my grandparents' house, he turned to me. Your mom doesn't need your drama anymore, he said coldly. She has a real family to focus on now. I grabbed my bag and got out without a word, walking away from the car without looking back. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I waited until he drove away before I let the tears fall. Standing in my grandparents' driveway with a duffel bag full of my pathetic possessions, officially homeless at 14. My grandparents took me in without hesitation, but they were furious. My grandpa couldn't believe Mom would do this. My grandma just hugged me tightly, shaking her head. They wanted to confront my mom immediately, but I begged them not to. It won't change anything, I said. She's chosen him. She doesn't want me. That realization, that my own mother had chosen her new husband and baby over me, that she'd believed I was a thief without a second thought, was the hardest pill to swallow. I wasn't just a normal teenager trying to figure out high school. I was essentially orphaned. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed in their guest room, now my room that night, looking at the few possessions I had. Some clothes, my school backpack, a couple of books. I realized I didn't have a single photo of my dad. They were all back at the house, probably already thrown away. That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never need my mom or Jensen for anything ever again. I was done being vulnerable to people who could hurt me. Living with my grandparents helped, but they were retired and on a fixed income. They had a small pension and social security, but not enough to support another person comfortably. They couldn't support me beyond providing a roof and food. So when I turned 15, I started working at a local coffee shop on weekends. The pay was shit, but it was enough for basic necessities. The coffee shop job taught me a lot. I learned how to deal with difficult customers, how to manage my time, and most importantly, how to save money. I opened a bank account with my grandpa as a co-signer and put away half of every paycheck. I didn't know what I'd need it for yet, but I knew having my own money meant freedom. Balancing work and school wasn't easy. I'd get up at 5 a.m. on Saturdays for the opening shift, work until 2 p.m., then come home and do homework until I passed out. Sundays were the same. My grades slipped a bit, but I managed to stay on track to graduate. The real kick in the teeth was that my mom didn't check in even once. It was like I'd ceased to exist. Through family gossip, I'd hear about her, Jensen, and Theo. Things weren't going well. Jensen's contracting business was losing clients because he'd show up to jobs late or miss deadlines. He was taking on projects and then not finishing them, leaving homeowners with half-completed renovations. Word was getting around town that he wasn't reliable. I heard through my aunt that he'd started getting violent with my mom. Despite everything, I was determined to make something of myself. I wasn't going to let them define my future. I focused on school, picked my grades back up, and set my sights on college. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but I knew it was my ticket out of this town and away from the shadow of my mom and Jensen. Junior year, I landed a better job at an electronics store. The pay was better, and I got an employee discount, which meant I could finally afford a decent laptop for schoolwork. I was saving more, building my escape fund. By now, I had a clear plan. Graduate high school. Go to college far away. Never look back. I started researching colleges, focusing on schools with good computer science programs. I'd discovered I had a knack for programming and was essentially teaching myself through online resources. My high school's computer lab had ancient machines, but they worked well enough for me to practice on. When senior year hit, I kicked into high gear. I was working 30 hours a week at the electronics store while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. My grandparents worried about me burning out, but I knew what I was doing. Senior year, college acceptance letters started coming in. I was excited but terrified. There was no way I could afford college on my own. I had maybe $6,000 saved up. It would barely cover a semester at most schools. I was desperate. So I reached out to my mom. A tiny, stupid part of me hoped she'd remember I was her kid too. I remember sitting in my grandparents' kitchen late at night, trying to figure out how to word the text. I deleted and rewrote it at least 10 times before finally sending, "Hey, I've been accepted to a few colleges. I was wondering if you could help me with financial aid stuff or co-sign a loan." Her reply came hours later. "We're saving for Theo's future. We can't help." That was it. No congrats, no "we're proud of you," just a flat rejection. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Or maybe it just hurt more than I wanted to admit. I didn't respond, just deleted the conversation and blocked her number. Thankfully, my aunt stepped in when I told her what happened. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "I'll co-sign your loans. You just focus on making this work, okay?" She didn't have to do that. She had her own responsibilities and kids to worry about. But she believed in me, and that hit me harder than the offer itself. I got a decent financial aid package from a state school about 3 hours away. Between that, my savings, loans with my aunt as co-signer, and a work-study job, I could just barely make it work. It would be tight, and I'd graduate with debt, but it was doable. College was brutal, but it was also where things started to turn around for me. I met Nate in my freshman programming class. We were paired up for a project and something just clicked. He was the first real friend I'd had in years. Someone who got me. "Man, that's rough," he said when I explained why I worked so many hours. "But look at you now. You're killing it." No sympathy, just respect. It was exactly what I needed. Nate became the brother I never had. When I was pulling all-nighters trying to balance classwork with my campus job, he'd show up with energy drinks and takeout. When I couldn't afford to go home for Thanksgiving, he brought me to his family's house without hesitation. His parents welcomed me like I was one of their own. "Mi casa es su casa," his dad would say, loading my plate with enough food to feed 3 people. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I hustled nonstop. Nate and I expanded our web design skills and started freelancing for small businesses. We built a portfolio site, undercut the competition, and worked nights and weekends to deliver. We charged $500 for simple websites that local businesses desperately needed. It wasn't much, but it was extra cash that meant I could eat something other than ramen occasionally. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, but I had a goal and nothing was going to stop me. I'd sleep 4 hours, drag myself to class, work my campus job in the library, then stay up until 2 a.m. working on freelance projects. My grades stayed strong. I was determined to keep my scholarships, and our little business was growing through word of mouth. My mom? Radio silence. Not a text, not a call. I'd occasionally hear through relatives that things were getting worse at home. Jensen's business was failing, and he wasn't bringing in much money at all. There were nights he wouldn't come home at all. My mom had started working extra shifts at a supermarket to keep up with the bills, leaving Theo with neighbors or alone. I felt bad for the kid. He was innocent in all this. But I had my own life to build. When graduation rolled around, I sent my aunt and grandparents invites to the ceremony. They didn't just come. They were beaming. My aunt was in the front row, along with Nate and his parents, cheering louder than anyone else when my name was called. After graduation, the real grind started. Nate and I moved to a small city and turned our freelance hustle into a legitimate web design agency. We shared a crappy apartment to save on rent. The pay wasn't great at first, but it covered my bills and let me start chipping away at my loans. Those first few years were rough. We took every opportunity to learn, stayed late to finish projects, and volunteered for tasks no one else wanted. Slowly, it started paying off. Our agency grew, we hired our first employees, and before I knew it, I was running a successful business. Nate was right there with me, each of us pushing the other to be better. We had a pact. Neither of us would settle or get comfortable. We'd keep pushing. By my mid-20s, I was in a good place, paid off a chunk of my loans, moved into my own place, and had actual savings. For the first time, it felt like I was getting ahead. I had a solid emergency fund, was contributing to my 401k, and even had some investments on the side. I wasn't rich, but I was secure, something I'd never felt growing up. I helped my grandparents quietly, groceries, tickets, random upgrades. They never had to ask. My relationship with my mom remained non-existent. Through the family, I kept hearing her news. Jensen's business had completely collapsed. He'd lost his contractor's license after getting into a fight with a client. Their nice house was foreclosed on after months of missed payments. They'd moved into a small apartment, and things were getting worse by the day. I didn't feel much when I heard these updates. I'd stopped caring years ago. I was focused on my own life. Nate and I had been running our agency for about 5 years when we really started to scale. We'd landed several big clients, expanded our team, and moved into nicer offices downtown. Our reputation for quality work and reliability spread, bringing in more business than we could handle. The success accelerated everything. Suddenly, I was making serious money, the kind of money that meant I could pay off my student loans in full, start investing aggressively, and still live comfortably. I bought a house in a nice neighborhood, a reliable car, and for the first time didn't check my bank account before making everyday purchases. I kept my success quiet, though. I didn't post about it online, didn't tell most family. I didn't want to deal with the drama. I'd seen too many people get sudden money and blow it all. I wasn't going to make that mistake. My aunt, who co-signed my loans, was the only one who knew about my latest success. I took her out to dinner to tell her I'd paid off the loans in full and to thank her for taking a chance on me. She cried, said she never doubted me for a second. One weekend when I was visiting my aunt, she sat me down with a serious look on her face. "I don't know if you want to hear this," she said hesitantly, "but I think you should know. Jensen left your mom." I raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. "He drained their joint bank account and just disappeared," she continued. "Took everything. The car, what little savings they had left, even some of Theo's things. Your mom came home from work and found a note saying he was done with this life." I nodded slowly, processing the information. "How's Theo taking it?" I asked, more concerned about the kid than my mom. "He's struggling," my aunt said. "He's trying to understand why his dad would just abandon him. Your mom's a mess. Can't pay rent, can't keep food on the table. She's talking about moving in with friends, but I don't think that's going to work out." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to say, now she knows how it feels. But I kept that to myself. Instead, I just nodded and changed the subject. Later that night, as I drove back to my place, I thought about the situation. I didn't feel vindictive or happy about my mom's struggles. I just felt nothing. It was like hearing about a stranger's problems. Karma's a bitch, I thought to myself. What goes around comes around. I did feel for Theo, though. He was innocent in all this. Just a kid caught in the fallout of his parents' bad decisions. Just like I had been. But I also knew it wasn't my responsibility to fix their situation. Fast forward a few months. I was 29, running my own successful web design agency, making more money than I ever thought possible. I was managing a team of developers, working on projects that actually mattered, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had real security. Unfortunately, at a family gathering that I skipped, I was supposedly traveling for work, my standard excuse, my aunt casually mentioned it to my mom. She meant well. She's always tried to keep the peace. But that set off a chain reaction I wasn't prepared for. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw my mom standing there. I hardly recognized her. She looked like hell, thin, with dark circles under her eyes and clothes that hung off her frame. I hadn't seen her in years and couldn't think of a single good reason for her to be at my doorstep. I wanted to see what possible excuse she could have for showing up after all this time. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Can't a mother visit her son?" she said, her voice strained. "It's been so long. I've missed you." The fakeness of it made my stomach turn. I stood there silently, not buying the act for a second. If she'd missed me, she had 16 years to pick up a phone. After awkward minutes of her pretending to care, she finally spilled it. "Look," she said, her voice dropping the false cheer. "I'm in a really tough spot right now. Jensen left us with nothing. Theo and I are about to be evicted. I just need a little help to get back on my feet." There it was, the real reason for her visit. Not to reconnect, not to apologize, not even to see how I was doing, just to ask for money. "So you need money?" Her face hardened. "Of course I missed you too. But yes, I need help. Is that so wrong? You're doing well, and we're family." "Family," I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "You haven't been my family since you threw me out at 14 because your husband planted a coin in my room. You didn't check on me once. Not when I was working through high school. Not when I was struggling through college. Not when I was building my career from nothing. And now you show up because you need something?" Her expression shifted from pleading to entitled in an instant. "I raised you for 14 years, she snapped. "I fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. The least you could do is help me now." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You didn't raise me. You resented me from the moment Dad died. You made me feel like a burden every single day. And the second Jensen came along, you were done with me. You chose him over me without a second thought. That was a mistake, she said, though her tone suggested she didn't really believe it. I was exhausted, stressed with the new baby. Jensen was persuasive. And it took you 16 years to realize that? I asked. Or did you only figure it out when he left you with nothing? She didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. I don't owe you anything, I said firmly. Her face contorted with anger. This isn't over, she hissed. You can't just turn your back on your mother. Watch me, I said, closing the door. As the door shut, I heard her yell, You'll regret this! I'm your mother! I leaned against the door, my heart pounding. I pulled out my phone and texted Nate. You won't believe who just showed up at my door. He called me immediately. I filled him in on what had happened, and he offered to come over. Nah, I'm good, I told him. Just needed to vent. But the truth was, I was rattled. Not because I felt guilty, I didn't, but because I was afraid this wouldn't be the end of it. My mom had never been the type to take no for an answer, especially when she was desperate. I was right to be worried. I thought that was the end of it. I'd made it clear she wasn't getting anything from me, and I was ready to move on. But I underestimated her desperation, or her entitlement. A couple weeks later, I found out from coworkers that my mom had shown up at my office. I wasn't there. I'd taken a sick day, but she apparently caused quite the scene. She marched in, demanded to speak with me, and when told I wasn't there, refused to leave. She was shouting about family and sacrifices, and how I owed her. Security had to escort her out. I was mortified, and immediately notified HR, adding her to the list of people not allowed on the premises. I upgraded my home security system that weekend, added cameras, changed the locks, the works. Nate thought I was being paranoid, but I knew my mom. When she wanted something, she didn't give up easily. But the worst was yet to come. About a week later, I got home from work and found her waiting outside my house, pacing up and down the driveway, clearly agitated. The moment I stepped out of my car, she stormed over. You can't keep ignoring me, she shouted. What are you doing here? I asked, keeping my distance. I had my phone ready to call 911 if needed. We need to talk, she said, pointing her finger at me like I was still a child. There's nothing to talk about, I replied coldly. I made myself clear last time. I'm your mother, she screamed, her face red with anger. I sacrificed everything for you. This is how you repay me? By turning your back when I need you most? You didn't sacrifice anything for me, I said, my voice steady but firm. You tossed me aside like I was nothing. Her voice went from loud to hysterical. How dare you? After everything I've done for you, I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. And then you kicked me out at 14, I said, my anger finally breaking through. You abandoned me when I needed you most. Where were you when I was working weekends to afford school supplies? Where were you when I was figuring out college applications on my own? Where were you when I graduated? You don't get to play the mother card now that Jensen left you high and dry. Some neighbors were starting to come out, curious about the commotion. Great, just what I needed, to be the neighborhood drama for the week. He's a brat, she screamed, gesturing wildly. He's always been a selfish little brat. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. Go home, Mom, I said, trying to end the confrontation. Or wherever you're staying these days. Just leave me alone. That's when she lunged at me, grabbing my shirt. You ungrateful piece of shit. You think you're better than me? You think you've got it all figured out? You'd be nothing without me. I stepped back, breaking her grip. Stay back, I warned, my phone in hand as I started dialing 911. I mean it, Mom. Don't touch me again. Her face twisted in rage, and she made a grab for my phone. Don't you dare call the police on your own mother. One of my neighbors yelled, I'm calling the police. Leave him alone. More neighbors started coming out, watching this surreal scene of a mother physically going after her adult son. Someone pulled her away from me, just as police sirens cut through the air. She struggled against them, still screaming about what an ungrateful son I was. But it was over when the police car pulled up. The officers separated us, taking statements. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, showed them the text messages where she'd threatened me, and told them about the incident at my office. They escorted her off my property with a warning, but I knew she'd be back. The next morning, I went straight to the police station and filed a report. I explained everything. The officer helped me start the process for a restraining order. When I told my grandparents what happened, they were furious but not surprised. She's lost her mind, my grandpa said. I don't know what's wrong with her, but you don't deserve this. We should have done more for you back then. I told them it wasn't their fault. They'd done the best they could and were the only reason I'd had any stability after being kicked out. They made it clear they were done with her too. We've stood by her through everything, my grandpa said. But this is the last straw. We're cutting ties. The restraining order was granted, and I heard through my aunt that it devastated my mom. She'd been counting on either getting money from me or moving in with my grandparents. Now both doors were closed to her. She and Theo were staying in a shelter while she tried to find work. I felt bad for Theo, but I couldn't risk letting my mom back into my life. She wasn't stable, and she still felt entitled to whatever I had. Life finally settled down. I focused on my career, my home, and the people who truly mattered. My grandparents, my aunt, Nate and his family, and my other close friends. Nate had been my rock through all of this. When I got the restraining order, he stayed at my place for a week just to make sure I was okay. That's what brothers do, he said when I tried to thank him. And he was right. He was more family to me than my mom had ever been. A few months later, I decided to do something for my aunt. It wasn't about repaying her, but showing how much she meant to me. I planned a weekend getaway for her and her family, something she'd always wanted but never prioritized because she was always putting others first. When I gave her the envelope, she was confused at first, then gasped. Her eyes welled up. You didn't have to do this. I didn't help you because I wanted anything in return. I know, I said, emotional. That's why you deserve it even more. She hugged me tight, and for the first time in years, I felt the kind of love and support I'd spent my whole life chasing. She didn't just see me, she valued me. As for my mom, I heard she eventually found a minimum wage job and got a tiny apartment in a rough part of town. She was still bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful son who abandoned her in her time of need. But the family knew the truth, and that's all that mattered to me. For years, I carried the weight of wanting my mom's approval, hoping she'd finally see me as someone who mattered. But now I understand she never will, and that's okay. I don't need her validation. I built my life without her. She's just a name I used to know. My story isn't over, but this chapter is. I've learned that sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the right thing, walking away from toxic people, even when they're family, especially when they're family.